We're going to welcome back Karen Walstra, and she's going to be doing a presentation, and it's all about the question.
Hello, tech, don't we love it? So, yes. Hello everybody. Let me carry on from where I was trying to share. So for me, really as teachers, no matter where we're teaching, we really need to think about the question. And for me, Sir Ken Robinson has been an inspiration for years. And with his passing this weekend, it really made me think about, have we actually made any difference in the way that we teach since he presented his talk in 2006? So are we as schools killing creativity? Do we really need to rethink the fundamental principles on how we are educating our children? For me, it's around the 4 C's. Getting children to think critically, getting the children to be able to collaborate, getting them to be able to communicate. And therefore, if we get that right, they will become creative souls. And that's what we need in this modern world. We need children who can think outside the box, who can think and adapt to society. And so for me, as the teacher, are you asking the right question? So we all know blooms, but often as teachers, we sit in the space of asking, remembering, and understanding questions, these lower order thinking questions. We don't go higher up into the order. We don't actually start saying to the children, so how do you apply this knowledge? How do you analyze what you're actually working on? Getting into the middle order type question. And then even rarely do we get them to evaluate and to create. When last did your children create something from nothing? When last did you get the children to reflect on what they've learned and actually evaluate their own processes and thinking? So how are we getting the children to do that? Well, it's interesting that Debbie and them referred to the sustainable goals. I truly believe that learning should be made real. And the sustainable goals are one way of doing that. If we start showing the children these different goals and saying to them, how do we stop poverty? How do we get rid of people feeling hungry? How do we start with quality education or gender equality? That we actually start making the children aware of the bigger picture of the world out there. How are we doing that for our students? And one way you can do that is just by including 1 or 2 higher order thinking questions every time you prepare a lesson. Make it a habit so that you start introducing questions that will promote thinking and provoke thought within your children to start asking questions. There are lots of tools around. Kahoot is wonderful, and they even changed for COVID. So if you haven't played in Kahoot in a while, go and look at their challenges that they've created for COVID. Quizzes is another really useful tool. And somebody earlier this morning also said that they use quizzes. Go and have a look at quizzes and see how you can make it your own. This is a really old tool, and it creates QR codes, and you can ask questions, and then you can create a treasure hunt with them. So this class tools, which is their treasure hunt generator, is another way that you can be engaging with your students. And then one that I really love is Google Forms. Think about how you can actually use the Google Forms to engage with your students. Like Joel said, I truly believe that we should be giving the students answers to their questions that we are expecting them to do as quickly as possible. The more we can give our students feedback, the quicker we can give them feedback, the better they're learning. So how are we actually feeding back to them? And all of these tools that give instant feedback are helping build that knowledge base within our children so that we can ask the higher order thinking question. So for me, using auto marking tools is really useful on those lower levels of knowledge concept. So when we get to work through a problem, when we actually have to solve ideas, we need to get our children to reflect, to think about what they've done. And once they've reflected, they need to adapt what they've learned. When they've got a maths problem wrong, what did they get right? And how do they change their thinking so that they can work on to get the answer right again? And when we start looking at our answers, reflecting and adapting, we begin to learn. And then when we've understood it and we've learned what we're wanting to do, we can actually evaluate that concept. And we can really say, what do I need to learn further? Or no, I've grasped this, I can move on. And so the cycle goes round and round. How do we get our children to think? It all starts with us as teachers. What are the questions we're asking? Because if we're not encouraging the children to think, we're not actually helping them in the long term. So think about the types of questions you are asking all the time in every lesson. Get into the higher order thinking type questions, even with the tiny little children. It's not just something we start doing when we get to high school. We should be doing this in every lesson. We should be encouraging our children to ask questions, asking critical questions, that they begin to look at the information and say, how do I actually ask these questions? What questions should I be asking to solve the problem, to write the essay, to do the maths? It shouldn't just be that it's a one-way from the teacher. We definitely want our children asking questions. When they start asking questions, they become innovative. They become creative. So how are we getting that into our students? For me, it's all about asking the question. So in terms of your lessons, I hope you have fun with your students. Ask the questions, engage, and participate. I hope the signal wasn't too bad that you could hear what I said, but it's just getting the children to think. So thanks, everyone.